This is a story about one of the most elite fighting forces that Rome ever put into the field. And it's also a story about what happened to them when they vanished without a trace. It's me. This is Rubicon. Today, we are going to talk about echoes of the Ninth Legion. The year is 43 A.D. The Roman province of Britannia is at war with itself. Several tribes have banded together under the command of their charismatic leader, Caratacus, to fight back against the occupying Romans. But Rome has an ace up its sleeve. The eagle has landed in the form of the Ninth Legion under the command of the distinguished General Publius Austerius Scapula. We know relatively little about Austerius, but what we do know paints a picture of a man who was not just a great warrior, but one of the most effective administrators Rome had in its imperial army. He was the son of a former slave who rose through the ranks by sheer force of will, and he began his military career in the Balearic Islands, where he learned the skills of guerrilla warfare from the native Iberians. He became the first non-noble Roman to be appointed governor of Lusitania, and there he made such a good fist of suppressing banditry and settling the province that he was called to Britannia to do the same. His record there is mixed. While he won victories over the Brigantes and the Silures tribes, he was unable to end the revolt. In fact, the war would go on for another 25 years. But even his enemies respected him for his tactics, strategy, and bravery. One account says that he was killed in battle, but another says he died of illness, which would make him only the second Roman general of legionary rank known to have died outside of combat. Either way, he left the province in 47 AD and was replaced by his deputy, Aulus Didius. But while Austerius may be remembered as the best Roman general Britain has never heard of, Didius is remembered as the worst. Known to history only as Didius, he came to power at a difficult time. The Roman army was still engaged in a brutal war with the Brigantes, and many of the auxiliary units were at the end of their tether, and Didius made matters worse. According to the historian Cassius Dio, Didius began by insulting the auxiliaries and then murdered their commander. Then he started conscripting more auxiliaries and levied heavy taxes on the province's towns, and he even raised the price of grain, all to pay for siege engines. And this was a disaster because the grain supply was already running low. That last decision, raising the price of bread, was particularly disastrous. As Dio puts it, quote, Didius thought that the people of the cities could not possibly endure the famine or the excessive prices of grain, and so he determined to force them to endure hunger rather than pay higher prices. For this purpose, he issued orders to the country people not to sell grain to the towns, but to bring it across the sea into a part of Gaul under the control of the enemy. And sure enough, this backfired spectacularly. With no food and no hope, the provincial revolted. Meanwhile, Caractacus took the war to the Romans proper, sacking and burning the city of Londinium. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Not long after, the entire Ninth Legion, 5,000 strong, marched into the province of Rudipus, expecting to take part in the campaign against the Silures tribe, and then they were never seen again. There is no record of them taking part in any battles. They simply vanished. Some say they were all killed and possibly crucified by the Silures. Others say they surrendered and became Caratacus's bodyguard. Still others say they mutinied and joined the Brigantes. But the most popular theory is that they were all killed in a single day, wiped out by a single blow. So here's the problem. We don't know what happened to the Ninth Legion because they disappeared without a trace. There are no surviving records from antiquity detailing their fate. So all we have to go on is conjecture, folklore, and archaeology. And we can certainly find all three in abundance in Wales. There's a place called Caer Lee in Flintshire, Wales. It was the capital of the Ordovices tribe and the site of a major Roman fort built in the middle of the 1st century during the governorship of Suetonius Paulinus. Excavations have shown it was one of the largest and longest occupied forts in Roman Britain, measuring about 500 feet by 650 feet, enclosing two massive gateways. It was garrisoned by the 2nd and 3rd cohort of the 9th Legion, and the fort was constructed in a hurry and abandoned in the early 2nd century AD, only to be reoccupied later in the century and abandoned once again after 100 years. This makes it a prime candidate for the lost 9th Legion. A few miles away is another site that looks promising. The crumbling remains of a fort at a place called Castle Henleys was probably also used by the 9th Legion and seems to have been abandoned around the same time as Caer Leo. These two sites alone have yielded hundreds of artifacts associated with the 9th Legion, including the famous Chester Column, a stone pillar inscribed with the names and symbols of 9 of its centurions. But these aren't the only archaeological sites in Wales that seem to point to the 9th Legion. There are dozens more like them. There's a hill fort at Penwy Gair, near the village of Mynachligen in Denbighshire. It was occupied between the 1st and 3rd centuries A, a period that corresponds exactly with the presence of the 9th Legion. Archaeologists found evidence of a barracks, workshops, and living quarters. So the settlement may have been used to house the entire legion. And that's not all. There are hundreds of Roman coins minted in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD scattered throughout Wales. Hundreds. Even more fascinating, archaeologists have found no evidence that the natives ever minted Roman coins. These were almost certainly brought here intentionally by members of the 9th Legion. Now, we have every reason to believe that some of the legions were stationed in Wales, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were all killed here. There's a smaller fort at Mynyd Llandigai in Anglesey, Wales. Excavations revealed traces of a building that was probably used as a treasury, and that suggests that the Legion may have been storing supplies here. After all, why keep your treasure in one place if you're about to move it? These archaeological sites all fit perfectly well with the story of the lost 9th Legion. But at the end of the day, they tell us nothing for certain. All we can say is that this legion was likely active in northern and mid Wales for a few decades in the 1st and 2nd centuries. But whether it was all wiped out in a single battle or whether it dispersed gradually to join other units or local tribes, we don't know. For all we know, the eagles of the 9th are sleeping beneath the hills of Wales to this very day. And perhaps that's how the legends are born. From small kernels of truth, from the loss of a few men here, the loss of a few men there, and the stories grow until they consume whole legions and entire provinces. Next week, we are going to look at a new discovery that may help solve one of the biggest mysteries of ancient Rome, the identity of Cleopatra's Egyptian lover and the father of her children. If you want to get a preview of that episode and everything else that happens on the channel, then sign up for our newsletter by clicking the link in the description below. I'm also doing something different this week. I am releasing a companion episode to the main feed on another platform. The episode is called The Lost Eagles, and it runs about half an hour. I visit the National Roman Legion Museum in Wales to try to piece together the real story of the 9th Legion from the artifacts that were probably carried by the soldiers themselves. And if you want to watch that episode, then you can check it out on a streaming service starting on Thursday, November. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And I will see you next week.